Alright, here we go. What is going on, YouTube? Run and Gun Sports back here with another video. Today is our Dolphins team off-season review. We've got a lot of talk about the Dolphins. Made a trade today we'll talk about later in the video. So if you have not already, please subscribe to the channel and share this with your friends, especially if you have any Miami Dolphins fans you know of. Share this to them. We're going to be talking about the off-season right now for them and what moves to make to have a better off-season and have a better 2021 year. So just last year they were just short, so please leave a like down below, subscribe, and let's get right into the video. So the Dolphins last year in 2020 went 10-6. Honestly, not even a bad year considering how horrible they previously have been. Brian Flores, the new head coach, really came in there and did a lot of good things with that team, and I think he should have won Coach of the Year. And I think that he did a great job with that team, bringing them from being terrible to being very good. And they were just a game short of making the playoffs. And if they were in the NFC, then they would have made the playoffs easily, because the NFC was just not really very competitive as much as the AFC was last year. I mean, you had a 10-6 team not make the playoffs, and that's pretty. I mean, just shows you how competitive it is. And then you have a team like the Washington football team who make it in with a losing record, which is just crazy. But even though they did have a losing record, they did give Tom Brady and the Buccaneers the closest game in the playoffs that they had the entire throughout the season, or excuse me, the playoff journey to winning the Super Bowl. So you got to look at it some way. They did win their division, a terrible division last year, but the Dolphins were in one of the toughest divisions, the AFC East. They finished second, and this year it's going to get even tougher with the Patriots making so many off-season moves, and the Buffalo Bills obviously making the AFC Championship game last year, and they came up short versus the Chiefs. But 4 out of the 6 Dolphins losses were to playoff teams, and that's pretty impressive. The Patriots were one of the teams that they had lost to as well in week 1. Week 1, it's not the best week. Guys don't really know how to play with each other quite yet, and also the fact that it's Bill Belichick. And honestly, even though the Patriots didn't make the playoffs, you could consider them a playoff team just from the fact that Bill Belichick is their head coach. And a lot of the controversy with the Miami Dolphins last year was Tua Tagovailoa and Ryan Fitzpatrick fighting for the number 1 quarterback spot, the starting quarterback position. In the first the first 5 games of the season, Tua Tagovailoa sat on the bench with Ryan Fitzpatrick starting. And then during the bye week, and Ryan Fitzpatrick didn't even do that bad, really. Actually, I don't think he did bad at all. He did quite well. And then Ryan Fitzpatrick came in, Tua Tagovailoa came in after their bye week, and they put him in, and he did quite well, honestly. I don't think he's a bust at all, and I really find it frustrating that people are considering Tua Tagovailoa to be a bust. It's his first year in the league. I mean, Justin Herbert had a great year, and yes, you can look at it as he was not. I don't think anyone's claiming Tua Tagovailoa to be the best quarterback in the draft class by any means. I don't think that at all. But I don't think that he's a bust yet. I mean, he led the team to 10-6, and the Raiders versus Dolphins game was one of the more confusing games when Brian Flores did decide to pull Tua out of the game. Their 2 touchdowns at the time was from Tua himself, and taking him out of the game really didn't make any sense. Obviously, Ryan Fitzpatrick had an incredible throw, being held on by the face mask on that, and ended up helping him win the game. But if it wasn't for that, I don't know, and I just don't know why they pulled him out. And luckily it was a good decision, ended up being. But if that had not gone well, the decision hadn't paid off as well as it did, I just don't understand how that can be as well looked at as if it had gone well, which obviously it did go well. They did end up winning the game, but they didn't make the playoffs with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Ryan Fitzpatrick obviously was traded, or not traded, he was signed to the Washington football team, and we'll see if he starts or not. I kind of doubt it. I think they will select a quarterback in this upcoming draft, but either way, I just think that them taking Tua out of the game and a lot of games they would take him out just kind of randomly. It's not going to help a rookie's confidence coming into the league at all, and I don't see what good it does unless they're getting blown out by 30 or 40 points, which they rarely did, except for the last game of the season versus the Buffalo Bills. But they didn't pull him out of that game, but they kept him in, they pulled him out of a close game where he was responsible for the 2 touchdowns. So that just confuses me, and their stats aren't that different. I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick in 2020 had 68.5% completion percentage, 2,091 yards, 13 touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns, so 15 total touchdowns for him. Tua had 64% completion percentage, 1,800 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 3 rushing touchdowns, so 14 total touchdowns. So it's not too much of a difference, and that's obviously just reading the stats right there. That's not a big difference in numbers at all, and I don't think that their playing time was shared pretty equally. And Tua's not behind Ryan Fitzpatrick by that much in yards. He's only behind him on touchdowns by one. I'm a big fan of him myself. I just think that people have a short leash on quarterbacks these days. Like, for say Sam Darnold, another quarterback in the AFC East, who people are already writing off as a bust. In the same situation with Tua and Sam Darnold, his receivers are not good. Neither of them have good receivers, and you just feel bad for them. Devonte Parker and Mike Gesicki are about all that Tua and Ryan Fitzpatrick had, but especially Tua because he's been written off as a bust. I say if you put Tua on a team like the Buffalo Bills or the Kansas City Chiefs or the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with great receivers, I think you do just fine. I think if you put him on a team with just slightly better receivers, not even that good of receivers, let's say the Seattle Seahawks with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, I still think that he'd do fairly well with them. And I personally believe in the NFL that if you have enough good receivers, whoever's playing quarterback for you doesn't matter. You just have to get the ball to him. Devonte Parker and Mike Gesicki both had 700 yards. Mike Gesicki had 6 touchdowns. Devonte Parker had 4 touchdowns. Mike Gesicki was very consistent last year, and I think that he'll be good going forward for Tua and Tua likes to pass him the ball. Obviously, he's 6 touchdowns for him, and I think it's his first year in the league. I mean, it's brutal that people are writing him off as a bust already, and really didn't do that terrible. I mean, he's 10-6. I mean, Joe Burrow and Tua are both in the same conversation for who's the best coming out of that draft class, which to me is ridiculous because Joe Burrow didn't even play this season. I mean, he had 2 good games, and he played 3 games. He lost all of them, and Tua went 10-6, led his team to a 10-6 record. And I think that it's just really disappointing that that's just the way it is for quarterbacks these days coming in their rookie season. I don't think Tua or Sam Darnold are bust. I think we give those guys good receivers. I still think that they do fairly well. And going on to the defense, their defense was very strong last year. I believe it won them a couple of games. Xavier Howard, Pro Bowl corner, 10 interceptions and 20 pass deflections. Those are both number 1 in the NFL. 10 interceptions is a lot. Very good and very bright future for the Dolphins defense. He also had a forced fumble and 40 tackles on the season. So the Dolphins versus the Rams game, that was Tua's first starting game, a game that the Rams were really supposed to just blow out the Dolphins, and no one really expected much from the Dolphins in that game, and they expected Tua to not do well with Aaron Donald in that tough Rams defense, which is easy to say because the Rams have probably the best defense in the league, and they won. The Dolphins defense for sure won the game. Tua played well. He didn't play great, and he threw a touchdown pass, but he also had help from his defense and the special teams, and I think that really helped out in the end, and it helped them win the game, and they won a lot of games with their defense. They gave the Kansas City Chiefs a tough game. I mean, Xavier Howard had 2 picks in that game, and I think that the Dolphins will have a really good year if that defense can stay together. You also have Jerome Baker, who had 70 solo tackles on the year, 7 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 112 total tackles, and he's a linebacker. 7 sacks for a linebacker is really, really, really good, and I think that that's going to be great to keep around if they can keep him out. Kyle Van Noy is out, is gone. He's returning to the Patriots. But without Kyle Van Noy, I don't think it's that big of a loss for them personally. And they've made some very good free agent moves, as I was just talking about how poorly the receivers are. Will Fuller from Houston in 2020 had 53 receptions, 879 yards, 8 touchdowns in 11 games played. He was suspended for performance-enhancing drugs, which maybe that helps his play. I mean, he had a great year. I had him on my fantasy team. He did great. They also did sign Robert Foster from the Buffalo Bills, a guy who does not put up the craziest stats, but he's a very solid receiver, and I think he's right up there with Devonte Parker. I just think Devonte Parker is a little bit washed at this point, but I still do think Mike Gesicki is going to have a good future in the league. And Dolphins also just signed Jacoby Brissett after Ryan Fitzpatrick go. I'm hoping as a backup. The Dolphins signed him as a starting quarterback position. They have bigger issues than Tua Tagovailoa. Clearly, I mean, no offense to Jacoby Brissett. He's learned from the best. He was Tom Brady's backup for a while, but he's not on the same level as Tua Tagovailoa. Tua was drafted third overall in the NFL draft. But either way, I just think that the Dolphins they're in a great spot, and right now we're going to be talking about the trade that they made with the San Francisco 49ers today. They have traded the number 3 overall pick in this year's NFL draft with the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers receive the 3rd overall pick in the draft. The Miami Dolphins receive the number 12 overall pick in the 2021 NFL draft. The 3rd round pick in the 2021 NFL draft, a 2022 and a 2023 first round picks in the future first round picks, both those 2022 and 2023. So that right there is just, I think the Dolphins won the trade. I mean, doesn't take a genius to say that. That's extremely lopsided, and it really makes me wonder who the 49ers will pick up with the 3rd overall pick and giving that much up for them. I think we'll talk about that later in our NFL Weekly News update. I'm really interested to see who they'll decide to pick up in that pick. But I think with the Dolphins and them having the 6th overall pick, I do think that picking up a receiver would go a very long way. Devontae Smith or Jalen Waddle, I think those are the 2 guys they need to be looking at for that pick with the 6th overall. I just think that they'd be a good fit. And obviously Tua, who went to Alabama, both those guys he's played with before, familiar, and I think that would be a great fit, playing with people that he's done very well with, and I think that would help him out a lot and help him progress more, playing with guys he knows a little more. And I think with the number 18th overall pick, with Kyle Van Noy leaving the Dolphins, he put up pretty good numbers. I mean, he's not terrible, but he's not great. He's an above average player. He's not elite or anything, but on a 5 level tier, I'd say he's about a 4. And I think that to replace him, I think Jeremiah Owusu-Karamoah from Notre Dame. Sorry if I mispronounced that. I think that's a very good pick for them to try to replace Kyle Van Noy, and I think that'd go a long ways towards doing it, and probably even better than Kyle Van Noy, with being young, more potential, and a better future for him. And with the 36th overall pick, Javonte Williams, the other running back coming out of North Carolina. We talked about Michael Carter, who is probably in my opinion, the 2nd best running back out of the 2020 NFL draft class. And I think that if the Dolphins can pick up a running back to go along with Myles Gaskin and Salvon Ahmed, I think that would be good, because those guys they're decent, but they could be doing a lot better, especially Myles Gaskin coming out of Washington, very good player. I still think he has potential to be a very good player in the NFL. I just think that the time's running out. When you're not producing numbers by your rookie contract, you will be traded. That's just how it is, and it's the profession that they play in. And I think that Myles Gaskin in 2020 had 584 yards, 3 touchdowns, 142 rushing attempts. I think those are pretty good stats, but if he wants to be kept around in Miami after when his rookie contract is over, he's gonna have to put better stats than that. That's half of 1,000 yards, and I mean it's not terrible, but 3 touchdowns is not very much. And the Dolphins don't pass the ball. It's not a one-sided attack on offense. They do balance it pretty much. They will pass it a little more than run, but it's not like a big difference in passing to running ratio. They also have Salvin Ahmad, as I said, 75 attempts, 319 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Both those guys are averaging 4 yards per carry. I just think that maybe more carries would even help them more. And I think that if they can average 4 yards per carry still with you double both those guys' attempts, the rushing attempts, I think that if they can still average 4 yards per carry, that'd go a long way. And Tua is not the greatest thrower, but he is, like I said, if you have enough weapons to him, I think he can distribute it, and that's why I think he succeeded so well at Alabama. I mean, some of the best receiving classes we've seen. He just has to get those weapons, and I think that the Dolphins have the money in the cap space, they have the draft picks, they have all the resources in the world to pull off putting together a great receiving class. Will Fuller is going to be great pick for him, and if they pick up Jalen Waddle, Devonte Smith, or even Jamar Chase from the first round in this year's NFL draft, I think it would even be better. For just all the help that he needs for receivers, did not have very good receivers. I mean, you see Justin Herbert, he comes out, and I don't think he's as good as people say he is, because he had great receivers. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Hunter Henry, right there, those three guys, his top 3 receivers, and Tua Tagovailoa's top 3 receivers in their rookie years are not even close. You can't even compare it. It's just ridiculous. And I think Herbert's a talented player, but I think if you gave him the receivers that Tua Tagovailoa has, I don't think there'd be much difference than in the stats that there is with Tua's receivers. I think if you switch those guys, the stats would be almost identical for each guy. So 21 projection for the Miami Dolphins. I think the very worst they could do is go 10-6 like last year with 4 picks out of the top 50 draft picks this year. I just think that's crazy for building for the future. And considering they were 10-6 last year, with that many picks in the draft and picking up Will Fuller, I just can't see how they could do any worse than 6 losses. And Brian Flores is a great coach. He also was one of the coaches at the Senior Bowl, and that's a big advantage to be able to scout for players and whatnot. So I think that goes a long way as well. I think the very best they could do is go 13-3 on the season. I think that would be a very good pickup for them, and I think that 12-4 is the actual record that the Miami Dolphins will end up at. That is going to wrap it up for today's video. If you guys did enjoy, please leave a like down below. As always, share this to your Dolphins friends, and thank you.